Ponga mucha atención a lo que está viendo. Ustedes están observando el momento exacto en que el juez Caldwell perdió la paciencia después de que se filtrara esta mañana la grabación del testigo 14. El equipo de defensa no solo perdió el argumento, perdieron su libertad. Aquí está exactamente lo que contenía esa grabación. Esto no es especulación, ¿me entiende usted? Esto no es rumor. Los alguaciles federales sacaron a 3 abogados defensores esposados en pleno juicio. Cuando un juez federal en funciones ordena el arresto de oficiales del tribunal en televisión en vivo, algo catastrófico acaba de suceder. Entonces, ¿qué provocó esta explosión sin precedentes en la sala del tribunal? A las 7:47 de la mañana, hora del este, esta mañana, un archivo de audio encriptado apareció simultáneamente en 4 plataformas principales de denunciantes. El archivo estaba etiquetado W14 privilegiado, no distribuir. En 90 minutos había sido descargado más de 3 millones de veces. Para las 9:15 de la mañana, el audio se estaba reproduciendo en todas las cadenas de noticias principales. Ese audio era el testigo 14, el testigo protegido estrella de la Fiscalía, hablando en una conversación grabada que nunca se suponía que existiera. Esto no es solo otro drama judicial. Esto es lo que pasa cuando el testigo más protegido en un caso federal de corrupción es grabado por los mismos abogados que juraron proteger los intereses de sus clientes. Y lo que discutieron en esa grabación va mucho más allá de estrategia legal. La reacción del juez Caldwell lo dice todo. No pidió un receso, no emitió una advertencia, hizo señas a los alguaciles estadounidenses e hizo arrestar a toda la mesa de la defensa antes del descanso matutino. En 37 años en el Tribunal Federal, nunca había hecho nada ni remotamente parecido a esto. Y yo tengo el audio aquí mismo, tengo la transcripción, tengo los documentos judiciales que se presentaron en las últimas 2 horas. Permíteme mostrarle exactamente lo que están tratando de enterrar. Esto es lo que la grabación del testigo 14 revela realmente. La grabación dura 11 minutos y 43 segundos. Captura una conversación entre 3 individuos ahora confirmados como el abogado defensor principal Marcus Webb, el consejero asociado Daniel Jaramán y una tercera voz que los fiscales han identificado como un intermediario que trabaja para los socios comerciales del acusado. Esto es todo. Esto es de lo que todo el mundo está hablando. La primera bomba cae en la marca de 2:14. La voz de Webb, clara como el agua, declara: el testigo necesita entender que la cooperación tiene consecuencias, no consecuencias legales, personales. Asegúrense de que ese mensaje sea recibido antes del jueves. Esa fue una referencia directa al testimonio programado del testigo 14. Según los fiscales que revisaron la grabación completa, Webb luego discute detalles específicos de materiales sellados del gran jurado, detalles que solo alguien con acceso interno podría poseer. En la marca de 4:47, la tercera voz responde: la situación familiar le ha quedado clara. El empleador de la esposa, la inscripción escolar del niño, entiende lo que está en juego. La cinta documenta lo que parece ser manipulación explícita de testigos, obstrucción de la justicia y la divulgación de materiales protegidos del gran jurado. Pero aquí está la parte más dañina. En la marca de 8:22, Jaramán pregunta sobre arreglos de pago. Webb responde: el anticipo cubre esto. Ha sido estructurado a través de la LLC consultora, nada se rastrea de vuelta. Los registros financieros citados esta mañana muestran transferencias bancarias por un total de $847,000 de una entidad extranjera directamente conectada al ex socio comercial del acusado. El momento de esas transferencias, 3, 6 y 12 de enero de este año, coincide con las fechas referenciadas en la grabación. El analista...
Donald Trump has refused to comply with the federal court's orders. Not appealed, not challenged through legal channels, not negotiated for modified terms, refused. He issued a public statement this morning declaring the court's rulings, including the 9-0 Supreme Court decision, illegitimate, and stating that he does not recognize the authority of a weaponized court system. He has physically barricaded himself at the Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster, New Jersey, surrounded by private security and approximately 200 supporters, some of them armed, and is refusing to surrender to federal custody for processing on criminal charges. And Congress has responded in a way that has never happened in modern American history. The House and Senate passed a joint resolution this afternoon, with overwhelming bipartisan support, authorizing the deployment of National Guard units under federal command to enforce the court's orders. Congress is deploying the military, not the president. Congress. Because the normal enforcement mechanism, the executive branch, cannot resolve a physical standoff created by a former president who has surrounded himself with armed civilians and declared that the judiciary has no authority over him. Warren Buffett released a statement tonight, and this time, after months of financial analysis, market commentary, dynasty autopsies, and institutional assessments, he set all of that aside. He spoke about one thing: whether the rule of law survives when a man with power simply says no. I'll share his exact words later, but the short version is this: the system is being tested at a level it has not been tested since 1861, and the outcome is not yet determined. This is the story of what happens when a man who has been stripped of office, stripped of assets, stripped of his party's support, abandoned by his wife, exposed by his daughter, and convicted by every institution in the American system, decides that the constitutional order itself is illegitimate and that he will not submit to it. This is the moment the Constitution was designed to survive. The question is because the details matter and the gravity demands precision. Trump issued his statement at 7 a.m. through his social media platform and through a video recorded at the Bedminster property. In it, he declared, "The decisions issued by this weaponized court system are illegitimate. I was elected by the American people. I was removed by a corrupt judiciary. I do not recognize the authority of these rulings, and I will not comply with orders designed to destroy a political movement, not to enforce the law." He specifically named the 9-0 Supreme Court ruling as illegitimate, the ruling that he himself challenged through every available legal avenue and lost, issued by a court that includes 3 justices he personally nominated. He declared that the criminal charges, the asset seizures, the enforcement orders, and the passport seizures of his family members are all products of what he called a coordinated political prosecution, and that compliance with any of them would be surrendering to tyranny. Those are his words. I will not comply.
At 10:47 this morning, Judge Tanya Chutkan sat at her bench in courtroom number 4 of the Federal District Courthouse in Washington, D.C., looked directly at Donald Trump and spoke the words that will define the rest of his life. Quote, "Mr. Trump, you have been convicted by a jury of your peers of conspiracy to defraud the United States, obstruction of an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights. These are among the most serious crimes a citizen can commit against the democratic process. The harm you caused to this nation, to the rule of law, and to the peaceful transfer of power is incalculable. After considering the sentencing guidelines, the arguments of counsel, and the nature of your conduct, I am imposing the maximum sentence allowed by law. On count 1, 5 years. On count 2, 20 years. On count 3, 10 years. These sentences will run consecutively. The total sentence is 35 years in federal prison. There is no possibility of parole under federal law. You will serve your sentence in a federal correctional facility to be determined by the Bureau of Prisons. You are remanded to custody immediately." At 10:52 a.m., 5 minutes after the judge finished speaking, U.S. Marshals approached Trump at the defense table, placed handcuffs on his wrists, and led him out of the courtroom through a side door. He did not speak. He did not resist. And at 11:03 a.m., he was processed at the courthouse detention facility, fingerprinted again, issued federal inmate identification number 47382-054, and placed in a holding cell pending transport to a federal prison. Subscribe to this channel immediately because what I am about to walk you through is not just a sentencing. This is the maximum penalty a federal judge could impose. This is a 78-year-old man receiving a sentence that, given his age, amounts to life in prison. And this is the moment a former president of the United States became federal prisoner 47382-054. Here is what happened during the 2-hour sentencing hearing that led to this decision, because the arguments made by both sides reveal why the judge chose the maximum sentence. The hearing began at 9:00 a.m. The courtroom was packed. Spectators had lined up outside beginning at 4 a.m. to secure one of the 50 public seats. Media filled the overflow room, and every major network was broadcasting live. At 9:03 a.m., the lead prosecutor stood and presented the government's sentencing recommendation. He spoke for 37 minutes. He began by describing the nature of the crimes. Quote, "Your Honor, The defendant attempted to overturn a presidential election. He pressured state officials to change vote counts. He pressured his own vice president to refuse to certify electoral votes. And when those efforts failed, he summoned a mob to the Capitol and directed them to stop the certification by force. 5 people died as a result of the violence on January 6th. Hundreds of police officers were injured. The Capitol was
against the most powerful criminal syndicate in history. That's the way Donald Trump's hometown newspaper describes his current operations. Quote, the most powerful crime syndicate in history. The crime syndicate lost one today when Donald Trump was forced by a federal judge to deliver $127 million in overdue funding from the federal government for the New York-New Jersey Gateway Tunnel project, the new and very necessary tunnel under the Hudson River, strengthening the Northeast Corridor, the most important transportation corridor in the United States historically and in today's economy. Harvard University continues to defeat the crime syndicate in court, much to Donald Trump's expressed irritation today.
For Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Diller, how are you doing? How are you doing with Harvard? How are you doing with Harvard? You know, Harvard's extremely discriminatory, unfortunately, and it's working good. Harmeet is on their trail, right? Good. You keep suing them. The hell with them.
The yes, sir people in that room who are oh so comfortable are showing just how comfortable they would all be saying yes, sir, to any dictator. It is on a crime spree that puts Al Capone to shame. This administration has murdered Renee Good and Alex Preddy, slandered them as domestic terrorists and assassins, and allowed their killers to walk free. Unleashed thousands of minimally trained ICE agents recruited with explicitly white supremacist messaging to inflict terror on people of color. Repeatedly violated the constitutional rights of citizens and non-citizens by arresting them for First Amendment protected speech, raiding their homes without judicial warrants and imprisoning them without due process, and killed dozens of civilians on the high seas solely on the unsubstantiated claim that they were drug runners, not that being drug runners would justify their summary executions without due process anyway. Released hundreds of imprisoned felons who...
La información urgente. Cierra FATE después de más de 80 años trabajando en la Argentina, y esta es la imagen ahora, 7:49 de la mañana. Es una noticia de alto impacto por la cantidad de despidos. Los trabajadores ya fueron notificados y este es el panorama ahora, ¿no?
Mañana es un día de paro general. Más allá de los pormenores del paro, a esta hora sí empezamos a pensar cómo va a ser nuestro día de mañana, qué trámites vamos a poder hacer y cómo vamos a llegar a nuestros trabajos. Ale Pueblas, estás con toda esta información.
Así es, Soledad, porque el día de mañana va a ser muy complicado. Nosotros en este momento estamos en lo que es Constitución. Fíjate, faltan 4 horas para que salga el último tren, porque a las 00 arranca el paro, pero a las 22 sale el último tren de aquí. Recordemos, transporte público, trenes, subtes y premetros, colectivos urbanos, subterráneos, taxis, remises con servicios reducidos, aeropuertos y vuelos, bancos de administración pública, salud y de servicios esenciales, y otros servicios también que van a afectar es correo postal, recolección de residuos en algunos lugares.